Okay, let's sit nice and tall. Close the eyes. Take a nice breath in, a nice breath out. Allow yourself to land softly in this moment, to land softly in the intention of self-awareness, the intention of self-realization, and the intention of divine relationship. As you breathe in, know that it is really your choice, that everything you hear, everything you see, everything can be a teaching, a lesson that brings you closer to yourself. So a true nourishment. And with each breath out that you take, be grateful that not a single moment in this life is wasted. Not a single moment in this life is purposeless. Not a single moment goes by without absolute potential. We'll lift our voices in one Om, followed by the invocation mantras. Take a nice breath in. Om. Shri Guru Bhyo Namaha. Hari Om. Ganana Antva Ganapati Gum Havamahe Kavin Kavinam Upamashravastamam Jestarajam Brahmanan Brahmanaspata Anashrinvanuti Bisidha Sadhanam Mahaganapataye Namaha. Prano Devi Saraswati Vajebhirvajini Vati Dhinamavitriyavatu Ano Devo Brahataf Parvatada Saraswati Ajata Gantu Yagnyam Havan Devi Jujushana Gritachi Shagmam Novacha Mushati Shrinotu Vagdevyai Namaha. And then gently fluttering the eyes open. So we find ourselves in yet another moment of potential, another moment of learning, another moment of choice. And one of the big choices that we have to make right now, it seems like we have to make it over and over and over again, is the choice to be present to truth or be present to disinformation and confusion and delusion. Now, we can talk about this in various levels. The basic level is that of our own misunderstanding, of our own confusion. That as we wake up in the morning and then we walk through our day and then we lay down to go to sleep at night, we are really rarely looking through eyes, listening through ears that are constantly mindful, that are cutting through the veils of illusion and seeing only the truth. First of all, the truth that we tend to look for is a personal truth. It's what we think should be. It's what we think we want the world to look like. But when, as spiritual seekers, we are choosing the truth over illusion, the truth over confusion, the truth over misinformation, it's not that we are looking for yet another temporary kind of a mediocre solution to the problems of the world. It's that we're actually looking much higher than that. And we're saying, in spite of the conditions of the world, in spite of the confusion of the world, in spite of the animosity and the violence and all these other things that are happening in the world that really are the basis of worldly delusion, I am making the choice to remain steadfast in my relationship with divinity, no matter what. I choose to see divinity. It's not that I'm turning a blind eye to the injustices of the world, not at all. But it's very easy for us to look at those injustices and to become hopeless, to become depressed, to become sad, to become frustrated, to become part of the problem. It's very easy for us to do that. So instead, what we're saying is, I'm not going to become too attached to the drama. I'm not going to become too attached to the, oh, Jesus, there they go again. Instead, what I'm going to do is the work of divinity. I'm going to practice nonviolence, non-stealing, truthfulness. I'm going to uphold all those ethics that are talked about in the yamas and the niyamas. And I'm going to do so for the sake of a few things. First, for the sake of my own sanity. Second, and these are not in any particular order, but second, for the sake of my relationship with divinity, that relationship with God and Goddess does not take a back seat to involvement in the world. This way, all of my involvement, all of my presence, all of my intention comes from the place of that relationship and not from a place of the ego. And third, for the sake of all beings who are suffering, so that I might have clarity about what right action is, about what the right words are, about what the right intention is. So when we say in yoga, choose the truth, we're not turning a blind eye to anything. As a matter of fact, what we're saying is, I can look at the world through a dirty window. So in this window behind me, sometimes when it rains outside, it gets all like foggy and gets little water particles on it and whatnot. And it makes it difficult to see outside. You can kind of see, but it makes it difficult. I don't want to be looking at the world through a mentality that is like that, with condensation and grime and no, fog. I want to see the world clearly. I want to see clearly. And in order to do so, I have to make a choice. And the choice is one that has to be made pretty much every 5 minutes, maybe every 2 minutes. And that's the choice to not get pulled in to the complaining, to not get pulled in to the, putting the head in the hands, woe is me, to not get pulled in to the drama of it, and instead see that what this moment is teaching us, what this minute, this hour, these days are teaching us, is the importance of the ethics, the importance of the yamas and niyamas. And it's also teaching us that if we are not the ones to put them into play, then who on earth will? At a point in time where so many are so confused that they prefer violence over kindness, if you do not make the choice and I do not make the choice, then who is going to? So first is my relationship with myself. Second, my relationship with divinity. Third, for the sake of all beings everywhere. And again, not necessarily in that order. They're all kind of tied for first place. So we make this choice every time that we wake up, every time that we look around, every time that we interact with the world. And if we are mindfully and thoughtfully continually making this choice to be with truth rather than delusion, to be with divinity rather than the insanity of the world, to be nurturing healing rather than cutting deeper wounds in ourselves and others, if we make that choice consistently and mindfully, then what we end up finding out, we end up realizing, we have the epiphany of what is causing some of the issues that we're having, if not all of them. And that's attachment. You and I sitting here, we're attached to things. Everybody in the world is attached. Nobody is outside of attachment. If you are living in a body, you have an attachment. I would even suggest that saints have attachments, but they're just a little bit different than ours, because your householders have so much more seemingly at stake. Families and earthly relationships and expectations and, you know, children and marriages and partnerships and pets and all these things. So there's so many attachments. And the moment that something happens in the world, the moment that you put on the news or the radio, or, you know, you answer the phone and your friend is on the other end in a bit of a fit, saying to you, this is what just happened in the world. That's what just happened in the world. Did you see what just happened? It's triggering your nervous system. It's triggering your nervous system. And the moment that your nervous system is triggered, we go into the grasp mode. I need to grasp onto something that I think is going to save me. So let me attach myself even more firmly to my assumptions, to my expectations, to my requirements of other people. Let me attach myself even more. But when we make this choice to see through the veil of ignorance and to work for the sake of truth and because of truth and in truth, then those attachments actually loosen. And we recognize, or we begin to recognize, that everybody has a role to play in where we are right now. You have a role to play, your partner, your child, even your pets. We all have a role to play every single day in supporting each other or knocking each other down. We all have a role to play. And if I'm standing next to Niranjana and I'm in a state of fear and I'm holding her arm and I'm squeezing her arm because I'm so afraid and I'm holding her back, then what am I holding her back from? I'm holding her back from her own duty. I'm holding her back from where she's meant to go, what she's meant to do. But this is the way that we treat our relationships. When we are in a state of worldliness versus truthfulness or divinity, relationship with divinity, when we're so caught up in the delusion of the world, we hold each other back. We actually stunt each other's growth by saying, no, you can't go because I'm too afraid. No, you can't do that because I'm too angry. No, you can't do that because what about me? Krishna tried to make this point to Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita. When Arjuna tried to make the war about him, he said to Krishna, well, if I fight this war, never mind if anybody else fights it, if I fight this war, these are the things that are going to happen. Women are going to become tainted. Societies are going to collapse. Ethics are going to be spoiled. The world will be ruined as we know it. And, you know, you can kind of just see Krishna sitting there listening, going, what? If you don't fight this war, what makes you think you're the only one involved? This is a communal thing. This is all of us together. You have a role to play. Don't turn your back on the role. So Arjuna says, but I don't want to play that role. That's not the role I signed up for. Or at least if it was, it's not the role I want anymore. So you know what I think? I think I'm going to go take a new role. I'm going to go become a monk. And he actually told Krishna that. He said, I better I become a renunciate. And Krishna looked at him. And again, you know, I could kind of see like, you know, the parent in Krishna coming out and saying, excuse me? So you're going to drop all your responsibilities and go hide? And, you know, do you not have respect for your teachers? And Arjuna was like, well, yeah, of course I have respect for my teachers. That's why I want to do this, because I have respect for them. And Krishna's like, no, you're just as deluded as the world. That is not why you want to do this. You are not thinking about going and becoming monastic because you have respect for your teachers. You're thinking about becoming monastic because you don't want to deal with the responsibilities of being a warrior. The Dharma you were born into is to be a warrior. You were not born into the Dharma of being a monastic or a Brahmin. So in India, an individual is typically born into a family system. And that family system, in some way, shape, or form, it's not completely rock solid, but in some way, shape, or form, is a definition of what that person will focus on in life. And so we have, warriors, and we have business people, and we have the monastics, we have the untouchables, which is a complicated subject. So basically, if you're born into a tradition, that's typically the tradition that you're going to be in. And there is lateral movement, of course there is, but, not under that circumstance, not when the war is about to begin. And Arjuna is needed because of his skill and because of the role he plays. But because he's so attached to the idea of the role he plays in a worldly sense, he shuts down the truth that he's hearing from Krishna in favor of the drama that's coming from inside of his own ego. And Krishna is constantly trying to say to him, no, you're misunderstanding. It's like a good parent. No, don't touch that, it's hot. No, don't stick your finger in the electrical socket. It's like that, right? It's like he's constantly trying to kindly tell Arjuna, nope, another mistake. Nope. But he also knows that Arjuna has to have this epiphany on his own. Krishna can sit there and tell him point blank, but it won't really matter until Arjuna has a moment of epiphany. Then the Bhagavad Gita is 18 chapters. It takes a long time for Arjuna to have a moment of epiphany. And in the end, some scholars even suggest he didn't have one. Because Arjuna's last statement to Krishna is, I understand. I get it all now. I will do as you wish. And that's not what Krishna was saying. He wasn't saying, do what I want you to do. No, he was saying, do what's right. Do what's correct. Some scholars say, no, that's just, he did get it. Well, you be the judge. But back to you. So what attachments now? What attachments in your life? What attachments in your belief system? What attachments to your emotions are stopping you from processing through all of the distractions and dramas of the world around us these days, stopping you from embracing a higher truth? As I said when we first started, when we cut through the drama, the first truth that we're looking for is a personal truth. That I don't want things to be like this. I don't want the world to be like this. I don't want people to be separated. I don't want people to hurt. I don't want. And that's a personal truth, but it's not the ultimate truth. What we want is not the ultimate truth. What we want is personal. Because some people do want violence. Some people do want separation. Some people do want chaos. So our want cannot be the entirety of truth, because that is above that holy truth, that divine truth is above our egotistical wants. But it's a place for us to start, because it allows us to ask questions. We wake up in the morning, we have the radio alarm on, and it alarms to the news. And all of a sudden, the first thing we hear in the morning is, some banter about California and Greenland and other things, and, war and whatever. And the first thought we have in our head would be, oh, I don't want it to be like this. Another crazy, chaotic day, another bunch of insults, another drama, I don't want this. Okay, fine. It's okay to have that be your first thought. However, don't stop there. Otherwise, you're just going to walk through the day a frustrated person. So don't stop there. Purposefully say to yourself, okay, if you don't want this, then what role are you going to play? How are you going to bring this up a step or two? How are you going to utilize this situation right now to cultivate the strength, the bravery, the courage, the insight, the foresight necessary to align yourself with the greatest possible truth? How will you use this feeling of frustration to allow you to, number one, evolve that feeling into something else? Because frustration can be very dangerous and destructive. To evolve that frustration into something else, but also, number two, to allow that energy to feed your commitment to the ethics, to feed your commitment to being of service, to feed you and your commitment, your intention. Is that all making sense? No. So this attachment that we experience when we're walking through the world, it's so powerful. We don't even know it sometimes. Most of the time, we don't even realize it. We have attachments to everything. Everything. I had a good friend when I opened my first shala, my first yoga space. It was a little 10-foot wide by 70 feet long space in Lakehurst, New Jersey. It was a strange little space. And then it had a little room off the back and the bathroom was back there. But the practice space was literally 10 feet across and 70 feet long. So you get 3 mats across and then however many long. And this one student who was coming in would always go and sit at the same place in the room. She always had to have that one spot. And one day she came in and somebody else was in that spot. And she came up to me after class and she was like, oh, they were in my spot. It just wasn't the same. I'll get here earlier next time. So I guess that week she had an epiphany because she came up to me at the next class and she said something along the lines of, I realized why I am so attached to that spot. And I said, well, do tell, because Lord knows you are that one spot. She said, because back in the day, like 3 businesses ago, this used to be a dry cleaner. And that was where I stood to pick up my dry cleaning. So that spot energetically was what she was familiar with. But it took her sitting with it for a week, asking herself, talking to her husband about it, talking to herself about it. Why is it that I felt so frustrated? Because that person was sitting there. All of the other spaces in the room were fine. And that was what she came to realize, was that there was an underlying reason why she had such a strong attachment. So what are your underlying reasons why you are attached to sitting in a particular place in class or reacting a certain way to people or seeing life a certain way? What is your story? Where do your attachments come from? So we have to ask that question. We need to really inquire about why we see things the way we see things. Why is it that it's difficult for us to forgive? Is it because we don't feel like we've ever been forgiven? Why is it that we see some people as being worthy of forgiveness and others as not, when perhaps both committed similar actions? Where in our life did we learn that? And then we have to ask ourselves, how do I unlearn it? How do I unlearn it? Because forgiveness is big. I know this is not something a lot of people want to hear today. I keep seeing people posting about it, like, I'm not forgiving anybody. Well, forgiveness is not what we think it is either. See, clarity is important. When we talk about forgiveness, we're not saying it's okay. That's not what we're saying. What we're saying is, I'm choosing the greater truth. The truth that every single life has purpose. Every single path has purpose, even the one that I don't agree with. even the one that I'm going to fight against, even the one that I'm going to stand up against, it still has a purpose. Therefore, I'm going to disagree with you. I may even fight you. I may stand up on the opposite side, but I'm not going to hate you. I am not going to condemn you and deny your potential to also realize yourself, which would end all of this craziness. I'm not going to deny you that possibility. I'm not going to hate you so much that I deny you the possibility of your own awakening. Because think about it. When we become vengeful beings, when we do that, and we do that, when we eliminate people from the light, what we're actually saying is, I don't want you to heal. I don't want you to know yourself. You don't deserve it. But I also don't like the way you're acting, and you better knock it off. But they're not going to knock it off until they have the epiphany of themselves. So you see, when we do that, when we refuse to forgive, we're actually stabbing ourselves over and over again, because we are becoming the obstacle to the solution. Does that make sense? It's hard though, right? But it is the truth. Because if we do not hold space for other people to heal, their actions will not change. I was looking at something online. I don't remember what it was about. Well, of course, I mean, it was about, Trump and Greenland or whatever. But the particulars of the post, I don't recall, but a woman posted up on there. I was quite taken by her post. She posted up and she said, all I'm praying for is that he figure out that he can do just as much good in this world as he can do damage, and that he choose good. And all the people came out of the woodwork screaming at her, oh, he'll never do that. He's this, he's that. And it's like, no, more people should think like her. More people should think like her. Because the reality is, each and every single one of us can do just as much damage as we can do good in the world. May we all choose good. May we all be empowered to know that about ourselves. Otherwise, we're all going to be the demon. We're all going to be the destructive one. Can you even imagine what that's going to be like? So don't deny somebody else the opportunity that you're trying so hard to give yourself. We ask, why does the world have to be this way? Well, the only way that the world is not going to be this way, if more and more of us rise up out of our attachments and into the light of self-knowledge. And certainly it's wonderful that the choir can do that. But at some point, those sentiments have to extend outside of the choir. We need to wish that for all beings everywhere, not just for the choir members. Questions or reflections so far? No? Okay. So we have attachment, we have delusion, and we have truth. Attachment to things, to ideas, to stories, to preferences. And each time that we attach ourselves to something, it weakens us. When it's an unhealthy attachment, it weakens us. Many of the great teachers through time have said there's no such thing as a healthy attachment. But there's a few teachers through time who have said there's a few healthy attachments. Be attached to peace. That's a healthy attachment. Be attached to God. That's a healthy attachment. Be attached to love. That's a healthy attachment. Those attachments are healthy until they're not. And you'll know that they're no longer healthy when you use them as an excuse, when you use them as a power symbol, when you use them to harm someone else. That's when those attachments are no longer healthy. You can also be attached to self-knowledge, knowing yourself. That's also healthy until it's not. So those 4 things. Allow yourself to have those gentle attachments, but for the right reasons. Not to elevate yourself above anybody else, but to empower yourself to be of a greater service in the world and to yourself. And to also support you in the difficult work of releasing the other attachments. Attachments to the story, attachments to the preferences. Recognize that each of those attachments, as I said a moment ago, weaken you. They literally drain your physical, mental, emotional energy from you and create a fatigue that lends itself to continuing the choice of drama over peace, illusion over reality, and falseness over the truth. Because a person who is weak, physically, mentally, emotionally, doesn't have the energy to make the right choice usually, the proper choice, the true choice. They don't oftentimes have the energy to do that because it does take energy. It absolutely takes energy. It takes discernment, which requires energy. It takes discipline, which requires energy. Because it's easy to give in. It's easy to say, no, I'm just going to go with the angry crowd. I'm just going to go around and just be angry at everything. Or I'm going to go around with the frustrated crowd. Or I'm going to go around with the complaining crowd. It's easy to just give in and go along with the way the wave is, the tsunami of energy. You just get caught up in it and they sweep you away. And so you don't really have to do much of anything there, but you will get stuck there. You will get caught there. And it will eventually drain you of your energy too, just in a different way. And then you won't know how to get out of there because you become so full of regret, resentment, guilt, grief, anger at yourself for ending up there in the first place. So just know that whatever choice you make, if you make the choice to go with what is easy, to go with the flow of what other people are doing, to go with that which is not true, which is violent, then what you're asking for is to have yourself diminished into someone who cannot think independently, who is not strong enough to stand up on their own 2 feet for the sake of the truth, for the sake of unity, for the sake of peace. You're asking yourself to be bound up in bondage rather than free. And this is a common misconception. And it baffles me sometimes when I hear people talking about it. They talk about aligning themselves with a movement that is for the sake of freedom, which is actually stealing their freedom from them. And I just, to me, it's like, no, if you're just going along with what other people are saying and doing without any introspection, without any inquiry, if you're afraid to ask a question, that is not freedom. If you're afraid to speak up against something for sake of being exiled or ridiculed, that's not freedom. That's intimidation. That's bondage. That's suffering. That's not freedom. Freedom is when you stand up on your own and you choose to see with clarity and you make your own decisions, not because you're afraid of what other people are going to say or do, who's going to exclude you, who's going to include you, what's going to bring more popularity, not because of any of those things, but because you see with your own 2 eyes what your human mind believes is happening. and you behave according to the ethics. There's going to be a lot of guilt in this country pretty soon, and around the world, really. But in this country particularly, there's going to be a lot of pangs of guilt and suffering. And there already are, because a lot of religious people who thought that they were living a very religious life turn their back on their ethics for the sake of a human being's ego. And there's a lot of damage there. A lot of damage. And it's not just with current politics. This happens all the time. This kind of thing where people turn their back on what they know to be right, when they turn their back on the tendencies of their own traditions or their belief. Like, and by beliefs, I don't mean just like human opinionated beliefs. I mean like their religious, spiritual beliefs. They turn their back on those things for the sake of a charismatic actor. They drop the ball on their own inquiry for the sake of having a sense of closeness to somebody with charisma. It happens all the time. It's called cults. And we have them in our country for the history of our country. They've been around forever. And I always have to laugh because every once in a while it'll come back to me, that somebody will say, oh, those people over there at the ashram in Reading, that's a cult. I'm like, yep, sure. Sure. Not, not. Cults don't teach people about free thinking, independent thinking, discernment, discipline in their own life, and then boot you all in the butt and say, now go out in the world and live that way. And cults don't do that. Cults stay here, do not go anywhere, and do only what I tell you to do. That's what a cult does. And it used to really, really get my goat when somebody would say something like that, they would get back to me. Oh boy. I always have to giggle because, students sometimes will come up and they'll be like, how do you stay so calm all the time? And I'm like, I'm not calm all the time. I have a little bit more of a control over my temper than what I used to have. But there was a point in time where something like that would send my right through the roof. And I would go off on a soapbox about it, and be like, these people, it's just such an ignorant thing to say. They don't even know what they're talking about because they belong to the biggest cult possible, America. And the American mentality of do what I say and don't be different, blend in, homogenize yourself, the great nationalist movement. And it's okay, except that it's not, because it's just another form of bondage. And we can be American and we can be proud of being Americans. And we can be whatever nationality we are, whatever culture we are, whatever heritage we are. We can be all of that and we can be very proud of it. Absolutely. But we need to also understand that is, if that is the only way we see ourselves, then we are robbing ourselves of a true freedom. The freedom to be more than just that. To be more than just that. Yes, I'm an American, and I'm very happy to be an American. And I was even proud of it at one point. I'm still proud of it, but it's questionable nowadays. But that's not all I am. It just happens to be one of the roles I play in this life. And I'm very happy to be, an heritage of Irish. I'm very happy about that. And I am still very proud of that too. However, that's not all I am. It's a very small part. It just happens to be where my family heritage comes from. I'm something much more than just that. If I limit myself to just those things, then I don't have very far to go at all. And I'm not willing to accept that, because I see on the clearest possible day that we were not meant to live in a cage. like no being was ever meant to live in a cage. We were meant to be of the universe and to live this life in such a way as it opened us up to the glories of this universe, of the divinity of this universe, and not just follow along with what somebody else is saying for the sake of ease and convenience. Nope. Nope. Go out there, fall down, scrape your knees, stand back up again, just to fall down again, climb the mountain, do what you got to do, make your mistakes. Absolutely. Know that we all love you. Whatever mistakes you make, we love you. You're never alone, but you have to be the one to do it, which makes us feel lonely sometimes, more times than not, probably. But you're never alone, because you'll always have this Sangha cheering you on, sending you well wishes, praying for you to break through whatever it is that needs to be broken through. And also praying that you know with clarity in your mind that no one can truly take your freedom from you. And that in any moment, the greatest of all epiphanies may come to you. And that's what we're wishing for you, is that the greatest of epiphanies come to you. The epiphany of unity, of oneness with that divine being, that consciousness, that thing that cannot be named but is called so many names. And in that you find the greatest peace and happiness possible. But in order for us to consistently wish that for other people, which is really the only healing. So again, we really have to break through the hypocrisy of our own self sometimes. Because when we look out and we say, well, I want to heal, and I want my friend to heal, and my partner to heal, and my kid to heal, but I don't want you to heal. You just keep on suffering because you deserve suffering. What we're saying is, I don't really want this world to change. I'm good with the struggle. Absolutely. I'm a little pissed because I have to be so inconvenienced by it. But yeah, because until that person who is being violent because they're suffering has healing, the world will not change, and your struggle will not change either. It'll just show up in different colors, different flavors, different textures, but it'll be the same thing. So as long as any politician has an injured inner child that they're not dealing with, as long as any injured spiritual teacher, any spiritual teacher has an injured inner child, a wounded inner child that they're not willing to face, that they don't have the community support to go in and nurture, they will keep committing the violences that they're committing. And those violences are against you and me and themselves. So they will just continue to propagate the world as they see it, a place of pain and suffering. And you and I will continually wake up in the morning and have that choice to make again. Am I going to be swept up in the tidal wave of illusion, delusion, anger, frustration? Or am I going to just break right through that veil and go for the truth? For the truth. And it's not going for the truth because all these other people are wrong. Because, hey, I'm wrong a lot of the time too. We all are. But it's breaking through that veil for the sake of the truth, so that I can be of greater service, so I can get out of my own way and I can get out of your way, so that I am less inclined to say, hey, I deserve healing, but somebody else doesn't. So I'm less inclined to say that, and more inclined to say, beloved mother, beloved father, whatever action I take, whatever thought I have, whatever intention I hold, may it be for the good of all beings. May I exclude no one, because I recognize that it's only when we all heal that we all come to healing. And until then, we just have a boatload of work to do, individually and communally. Oh boy, that was a lot, huh? Questions or reflections from anybody? Does Dominic have his hand up, Brittany? Did I see that? I can't hear you from back there. You'll have to come up by the TV if you want to ask a question.
He was just waving hello.
Oh, he was waving hello. Hello, Dominic. How are you? So no questions. Yeah.
I have
yeah,
two
go ahead,
reflections.
Kurt. Yep.
Yeah. So my first one is that you know, I find that personally, I can sit down and I can read through the Yoga Sutras. I can memorize the yamas and the niyamas, and then when it comes time in the heat of the moment to make my decision, oftentimes I make the one that doesn't align with them. And then I reflect back afterwards and I'm like, oh, this is the decision that I should have made. So I just get frustrated very often that I didn't take the time to really consider the decision that I made in that moment, and then I have to regret that decision later. Whereas I want to get to the point where I consider the consequences, and the yamas, the niyamas, before I go ahead and make that action.
Yeah. So that's a struggle that each and every person has. You're not alone in that. Now, the good thing is that you're recognizing it. Even though it's after the fact, you're still recognizing it. So that is a good thing. And you're not just throwing your arms up in the air and giving up. Now it's to move from having it be after the fact to having it be during the fact. Now, there might be a tendency. That's what you're seeing, is that there's some kind of a tendency. And so now with that tendency right in front of you, next time you find yourself caught up in a similar situation, just stop and take a breath and ask yourself, is this that tendency? That's all. Is this that tendency? It doesn't mean that you're going to change the outcome. But what you'll do is whatever action you decide to take next, or whatever action you decide not to take next, you'll do it with some kind of an awareness that that tendency exists. And it'll go on like that for a while. And you'll have feelings like, well, okay, so I'm asking myself that. And sometimes I say, yeah, this totally is the tendency, but I still can't stop it. And that's why, that's because you're in a phase in your life right now where you're building courage, you're building resiliency and strength, you're building. And maybe it hasn't become clear yet that you actually can change that tendency. But then a moment will come, because you have to keep inviting it. At some point, you'll say to yourself, okay, so this seems like a similar situation. Is this that tendency? And the answer will be yes. And you'll either laugh or cry or get frustrated, or something will happen. And you'll have a moment, just a little opportunity window, where you'll say, okay, not going to do the same thing then. Going to turn around, walk away. Going to admit it. I'm going to say, hey, I know this argument usually goes on and on and on from here, because that's my tendency, but I'm really trying to work with my tendencies. So I'm just going to ask your permission to drop it now. Can I just drop it now for sake of my own inner work? And even if you say no, I'm still going to drop it, because I just want to see what happens. What happens when I let go of this? So at some point, we need to move from that kind of resentment, regret type of situation, guilt type of situation, to the active inquiry during the moment. And then from there, move into the experimenting. What happens if I let go of this? And that can be kind of scary, because the ego is saying, no, you had that argument. You had the right point in that argument. You have every right to stand up and to call that person names or to do whatever the heck it was you were doing. And you got to just say to your ego, yeah, but that's not what I want to do right now. What I want to do right now is find out how I feel when I don't do that. I want to see what the option is, really see what the option is, and not just theorize about it. And then when that happens, then it'll go on from there. So it's a process. Yeah, but it's definitely one that's not easy. Not easy. And it's not easy sometimes when, like, if it's anger, it's not easy to like stop in the center of that heat and be logical or compassionate, or inquire, because that's not what anger wants to do. Anger wants to build and blow up. Yeah. And here you are saying, no, shh, okay, wait, I'm going to see if I can do this a different way now. I'm going to see if I can do it, but I'm really pissed, but I'm going to see if I can do it a different way. Yeah. I hope that was helpful, supportive. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Somebody
And
else
then,
has their hand up. Who's that hiding back over there? And I'm sorry, one sec. Kurt, did you have something else you wanted to say?
Yeah, if I could, yeah, there was just one other reflection I had was when you're talking about Arjuna and Krishna, that I feel like, I'm almost 40 years old and I've been going through life kind of without a definition, whereas Arjuna recognized himself with the kshatriya. I feel like I kind of bounce back and forth between jobs and groups of people. I take a little bit of each thing from everybody, but still at this time, I have no definition of who I am. And I just am curious if you have any insights on how to get to a place where I could be at peace and kind of recognize, what would that definition be for myself?
Yeah. So first of all, congratulations to you for knowing what a kshatriya is, because most people don't. Most people are like, what did he just say? Yeah. So you're growing, you're expanding your awareness. And labels are a funny thing because we want to be able to put a label on it. We want to be able to say, this is what I am, but just remind yourself, whenever you feel like a label is going to give you support, just remember that in that moment, if you label yourself, you're also limiting yourself. To label yourself is to say, I want some kind of a boundary or a gate around me, some kind of a, I want to limit myself. No, you don't want to limit yourself. What you want to do is grow out of those limitations and to see that the essential truth of yourself is actually limitless. But that's a really scary place to be, because in this world, we're like, that back jack that you're sitting on has a limit, right? You can lean back a little bit, but if you lean back too hard, you're going to end up on the floor on your back. So, everything has a limit in this materialized world. And so we think that we need to have that too, in kind of a psychological way. And we do that via labels. So how would you call yourself? What would you call yourself? Well, you're in process. You're a seeker who is in process. And what is it that you're seeking? To understand yourself, to know yourself. Well, am I a Christian? Am I a Hindu? Am I a Sanatana Dharmi? Now, for me personally, I prefer if there was going to be a label, I prefer to refer to myself as a Sanatana Dharmi. Sanatana Dharma is the ultimate truth. That's what that translates to. It's the universal truth, the ultimate truth, the divine truth. There is no truth greater than Sanatana Dharma. And so a Sanatana Dharmi is an individual who is pursuing Sanatana Dharma, who's inquiring and learning about it and trying to live it by its ethical precepts. So that could be one way that you look at it. Yeah. I hope that was supportive.
Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely. Who else had their hand up? Who is that in the corner? I can't see that far.
I'm Danielle.
Hello, Danielle.
Hi. I just want to say kind of like on what you had said, and I'm sorry, I don't know your name.
That's good.
Okay. So I'm 42, so a little bit older than you, but that doesn't mean anything. But I'm in that part of my life where I've also felt like, what is my purpose? And I've been doing a lot of work recently with this, and I've found a few answers myself. So I figured I would just maybe share what I've experienced.
Wonderful.
Yes, so I've always felt like I've been a very spiritual person, and I've struggled throughout my life, like you said, kind of different groups of people are going here to here and trying to figure out your way and where do you belong. And I never really fit into any specific group, even when I was in these groups. So I've always felt like I've been on this search, for these things. Career wise, I kind of thought my purpose was my career. I'm a nurse, and I thought that by doing my job was, God's will for me. And I really thought that's what it was. And it was not until more recently where I realized that for one thing, I believe that our purposes just change as we grow, and then that's okay. Our purpose, it does not have to be one thing for our entire life. It's like it's a group of things, and as we grow, we just change and we evolve, and we find new purpose. But I think that ultimately it comes down to what the ashram and what the yogic lifestyle, a lot of these things I really resonate with, because it's giving to others, it's love, it's charity, it's those things are what make me, feel whole and feel at the most happy. And it's not like I just started volunteering at a place last week, and it was a food soup kitchen, and I'm not posting it on Facebook, even though I'm a big Facebook person. I post my vacations and things like that, but I'm not doing that because this is a personal thing that makes me feel good. And recently also, I struggled with addiction, alcoholism, and I've struggled with, things like that. And so now my purpose, I feel, because I've gotten sober, is to help other recovering addicts, I had a spiritual awakening, and I had some pretty amazing things happen to me when I was getting sober. And I shared that story in an AA meeting, and people just were like gasping when I was saying it. And I just heard them, and I'm just like, wow, this is what it's about. It's about like telling my story, and that's going to help other people. And that's part of, what I want to do. And I got this ornament for Christmas, and it said, your story may be the key to unlocking someone else's prison. And it's just so true, and I'm just so thankful that, the trials that we have in our life, because those are I now, when something happens to me in my life that's like really bad, and I'm like, oh gosh, this is terrible, like how am I going to recover from this? I just know that is a good thing, because that's going to shift a change in my life. It's going to change something and make something else better. But that's only if you're that type of, you have to really want that too. It's like you can't just like be like, oh my gosh, this is terrible, I'm never going to be okay again. And when the really bad stuff happens, that's when sometimes the best things come out of it. And I've just seen it over and over in my life. And just so thankful for those trials and tribulations that make us stronger. But that was just to say about what you were saying, but I wanted to add something else, is what I was going to say. And that was, so talking about holding on to traumas and people's egos, like, not getting rid of childhood issues and then carrying it on in our lives. I was upset today because, well, yesterday, or I've been upset my whole life with my with my mother, because she's like this woman that I know she loves me dearly, and she tells me all the time, so I'm thankful for that. But she never was like there for me, like like in the way of wanting to spend time with me. Like when I was a little girl, she was so busy doing her thing that she didn't have time for me. And she'd say, stop following me around like a puppy dog, go outside and play. you know, that was kind of her attitude. And even until now, you know, like I wanted her to come here with me, and she's like, I haven't looked at my bills in 3 weeks and I need to look at my bills. And I'm like, you know, it's just, she's never making that time. And now I'm in my 40s and she is in her 60s. And I'm just like, we're never going to have this relationship, you know, and she knows it, you know, because she texted me and, you know, she can't even call me on the phone, but she's like, I'm sorry, I'm going to make time for you. And it's like, you know, I don't think that she might, but either way, I didn't get angry with her. And came here anyway, and I was laying I was laying there in the restorative yoga, and I could smell them making whatever they were making, but it smelled exactly like my mom's baked bread. When I was a little girl, she used to make bread, you know, from scratch. And I was like, that's such a wonderful smell. It made me feel so good. And I realized, you know, like it is all about love, you know, like it is about love. She has her own problems. My dad's mentally ill and she has to deal with him, and she doesn't have time because you know, she's got like ADHD, I don't know, but you know, she's got her own issues. So all I can do is continue to love her but like I need to let that go, and that's what I need to do instead of getting mad, because like that's the only way I'm going to heal as a human being, because that is childhood trauma and I'm still holding on to it, and I don't even have a clue what it's doing to me. Like it's probably doing all kinds of terrible things to me, but I need to just let it go.
Well, childhood trauma is very complicated, you know, it really is. And so what I'll say about it is this: every child needs, for proper development emotionally, mentally, they need to have nurturance. But the problem is that a child is reared to have a perception of what they want, and another person, like a parent, is reared to have a perception of what they can give. And those two things don't always, and actually very rarely, do they meet 100%. So here you are as a child having both an evolutionary need, you know, an actual emotional developmental need, and you also have a perceptual need based on what you have seen in the world so far as a child. And then your parent, who has had many more years on this planet, many more heartbreaks, many more experiences, many more teachings, and not all of a great quality, has their own inner perception of what they are able to give you and what they should give you. And those two things sometimes are like, you know, they pass each other right by. So the first step that I have found that's really supportive in healing from that type of childhood trauma, of not having received the emotional, mental support that a child really does need, is to acknowledge that we as an individual being can only ever give what we believe we have to give and are willing to give. And the willing to give part is often very, very, very firmly wrapped up, twisted inside of our own life experience. How much love did we receive? How much were we taught about expressing love? What were the beliefs and ideals that surrounded that in our own life? And then through time, we become aware of the fact that each one of us really is a product of our own upbringing, not just by our parents, but by the world at large. So that's one thing. And then as an adult, it's the same thing, basically, is that she's had reinforcing psychological, emotional, mental impressions, and you have also had yours. And you are still the child seeking the mother, and she is still the mother trying to fulfill the role that she thinks she's supposed to fulfill. And even though she might look and say, this isn't the way that I want our relationship to be, I want to be there for you, but she doesn't know how. And no matter what you say to her, you will not teach her how. She has to have the epiphany. So if earlier in the session today, I said, imagine I'm standing next to Niranjana and I'm holding her arm. And I'm saying, you can't go. You can't go. You have to do what I need you to do. There's going to be a part of her that's going to want to go just because of how tightly I'm holding on. And it's not because she wants to get away from me. It's because it's instigating her nervous system to do what her nervous system is meant to do, which is fight, flight, freeze, or be okay. And so it's not until I authentically release my grip, and that takes a lot of self-work. That takes years of counseling. It takes a lot of work to be able to say, I'm not going to hold on for my life anymore. If you have to go, you go. But just know that my door is always open. I'm always here. And I'm not going to be holding on like that anymore. Then all of a sudden, she has what we can call energetic circulation, where she's going to be confused for a little while because I've changed the conversation. So she's going to be confused for a little while. And Naranja, I hope it's okay, I'm using you as an example. This is fabricated completely, but basically, you know, this is mother-daughter stuff, father-son stuff, parent-child stuff, partnership stuff. This is the stuff. She's going to initially be confused because she's going to be like, oh my God, she doesn't care. Did I do something wrong? Is she mad at me? Is she being indifferent? How do I read this? And then, you know, your only job, if you choose it, is to just say, I'm trying on something new. I know that the way that I typically relate to this relationship doesn't work. This is what I was saying to you also before, Kurt, right? This has not been working for me. So I'm trying something new, and it has nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with me trying to find a greater freedom in myself so that I can be a better person, a better participant in this relationship. And then in that freedom, she might find her way. She might actually turn around and ask the question, well, can we go to the movies? Can we go out and get a bite to eat? Can we sit down and talk? Is there anything I can do to support you? So it's complicated though. You know, it really is. But where it begins in the unraveling is with each one of us changing something about the way we're dealing with the situation. And usually it's how hard we're holding on. It's how tightly we're gripping to the ideal of what it should be rather than what it actually is. And it always is a much more complicated deal than we are willing to say. We lump it all into a thing. We say, well, yeah, you know, she had a rough childhood. Great. It's a lot more than that. It's a lot more than that. It's every single impression that she ever brought in through her senses from the moment she was born until now. And it's how her brain has been able to process those perceptions and what she has within the limited scope of her own free will chosen to do with those impressions. And it's the same for you. And it's the same for me. And it's the same for every single one of us. And it's only when we start to really kind of recognize that and say, wow, I'm really being driven by those impressions in my reactions to things. And maybe I don't respond as much as I think I do. Maybe I still really am reacting. It's only when we get to that point where we're willing to say, when we have cultivated the strength within ourselves to say, I'm going to stop mid-sentence now. And I'm going to ask myself, is this just my tendency? And then you say, yes. Okay, then. Change midstream. Scared as all hell, but going to do it anyway. And then the change midstream is never, okay, fine, you don't want to spend any time with me, great, then you don't have to anymore. That's not the change midstream. That's passive aggressiveness. That's the tendency. The change is, I understand now might not be the time for us to spend a lot of time together, but I want you to know whenever you're ready, I'm here. And even if I'm not talking about it so much anymore, I'm still here. Even if I'm not grabbing onto you, holding onto you, making demands of you, asking you, I'm still here. I'm just trying something different. I hope that was supportive for everybody. I've kept you late. It's 5:43, or well, here it's 5:43. There it's whatever time it is. And Niranjana, thank you for letting me use you as an example. And as I said before, that was a completely fabricated example. But it's what we all do. You know, we cling to each other in ways that sometimes are not reasonable, and we don't know that. But it's definitely worth exploring so that we can just have a little bit more of that freedom within our relationships and within our life and within ourselves. It really does make relationships eventually a much better place to be. Good. So let's sit tall and close the eyes. Draw the hands together in front of the heart. Take a nice breath in, and we'll chant one Om and one All Beings mantra. Om. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Guru Bhyo Namaha. Hari Om. Now and always honoring your light and the light of all beings everywhere. Om, peace, peace, peace. Thank you all so much for being here today. All my love to you always. Now go out into that world and be you. Good. I'll see you next time. I'm back next week, by the way. I come home on Tuesday, so I'll be there in person next Sunday. I look forward to seeing you all.